I stood in the middle of the living room during a tense family gathering, the eyes of everyone fixed on me like daggers. Mom sat in the armchair, her hands tightly clasped, lips pursed, her eyes sharp and cold with reproach. Dad, beside her, shook his head, his voice low but cutting like a blade. "John, you're so selfish. Are you abandoning your frail, aging parents?" The murmurs of aunts, uncles, and cousins rose, a chorus of judgment. Mike, my younger brother, sat there, arms crossed, his gaze averted, as if he were untouched by this storm. I gripped the stack of papers in my hand, and what I did next left everyone stunned. My name is John. I am 36 years old, unmarried, childless, without a single day of proper rest. By day, I'm a software engineer coding until my eyes blur. By night, I drive for Uber, ferrying strangers through streets aglow with lights. My salary from my main job goes into the family's shared account, while the money from driving pays for fixing the roof, replacing pipes, or buying medicine for Dad when he coughs through the winter. I don't complain. It's my duty, I tell myself. My parents are old, they need me. Every so often, a stack of bills appears on my desk. The mortgage for my parents' house, electricity, water, hospital fees, and medication costs for Mom and Dad. I rub my face, trying to shake off the exhaustion that clings like a shadow. For 10 years, I've lived for my family, for the old house in the suburbs that my parents call their legacy. My parents' house is in Gresham, a half-hour drive from Portland. It's a 2-story home with peeling white paint and a moss-covered tile roof. I've paid to fix it, every tile, every pipe. I remember weekends spent covered in mud, climbing onto the roof to patch leaks, or sitting with Mom in the hospital, holding her hand as she whispered, "John, you're my rock." Those words used to be my motivation, making me believe every sacrifice was worthwhile. But then there's Mike, my 30-year-old brother, still living in his old upstairs bedroom, leeching off our parents. He has no stable job, just drifting through half-baked startup ideas that never materialize. Our parents dote on him, calling him Mommy's little boy. I don't blame Mike, but every time I see him carelessly playing video games while I'm hunched over paying bills, a small crack forms in my heart. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, the family would be fine. I believed that love and duty would be reciprocated. But I was wrong. One rainy afternoon, I went to my parents' house to help Mom sort through paperwork. She sat at the dining table, her silver hair disheveled, while I sat across from her, surrounded by piles of old documents. "John, help me organize these. My eyes aren't what they used to be," she said, her voice tired but warm as always. I nodded, opening the box of files, flipping through each sheet: mortgage contracts, home repair invoices, insurance papers. Things I knew all too well, things I'd paid for with my sweat and time. Then I saw it. A yellow envelope, carefully sealed, tucked among the papers. I opened it without much thought. It was a will, handwritten by Dad, his firm script bearing both his and Mom's signatures. I read it, each line cutting into my heart like a knife. The house, worth $450,000, the savings account, the SUV Dad loved to drive, the jewelry Mom wore on special occasions, all left to Mike. My name wasn't there, not a single line, not even a mention. I sat there, my hands trembling as I held the paper, feeling as if the blood in my veins had stopped flowing. 10 years. 10 years of breaking my back, giving up dreams, declining trips and dates to keep this house standing. I'd paid nearly $200,000 toward the mortgage, roof repairs, plumbing, and Mom's medications. I'd sacrificed my youth, my dream of becoming a photographer so my parents could live comfortably. And this was my reward: nothing. I looked at Mom, still fussing with the papers as if nothing had happened. "Mom," I called, my voice hoarse, caught in my throat. "This will..." "Why?" She looked up, a flicker of panic in her eyes, quickly replaced by composure. She sighed, her voice soft but cold. "John, you're independent, you're strong. Mike is young, he needs support. You understand, don't you?" "Understand?" I wanted to scream, to tear the paper to shreds, to smash the table, but I just sat there, silent, feeling a part of me shatter. "No, Mom," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I don't understand at all. Then I stood, clutching the will, and walked to the living room. Dad was in his armchair, eyes glued to the TV, the drone of baseball commentary filling the air. "Dad," I called, my voice shaking but trying to stay calm. "Explain this. The will. Why am I left with nothing?" Dad glanced at me, his eyes icy, then turned back to the screen. "Like your mother said," he growled, not bothering to look at me. "Mike needs a foundation. You're grown. You can handle yourself. Don't make a big deal out of this." I stood there, stunned, as if I'd been slapped. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of sweat, and Dad called it making a big deal? I couldn't take it anymore. "So that's it," I said, my voice breaking. "Both you and Mom think I'm not worth a dime, is that it?" Dad didn't answer, just shook his head, his expression dismissive. I threw the will onto the table and turned toward the door. Rain stung my face, cold and biting, but I didn't stop. Dad's voice trailed after me, faint but clear. "Grown man acting like a child." No one called me back, no one stopped me. The door slammed shut and I stepped into the rain, carrying a pain that tore through my chest. I drove back to Portland, the rain blurring the windshield, or maybe it was tears. I wasn't sure anymore. In my mind, memories flashed. Sleepless nights coding, mornings counting every penny to pay bills, Mom calling me her rock. All of it now felt like a cruel joke. I pulled over, slamming my hands against the steering wheel, screaming into the cramped space of the car. No one heard, just me and the burning pain consuming me. That evening, I sat in my small Portland apartment, the desk lamp casting shadows on the bare wall. In front of me was my laptop, its screen displaying the family's shared bank account, where I'd funneled my salary for the past 10 years. I stared at the numbers, the automatic payments for the mortgage, electricity, water, internet. Each line was a reminder of the years I'd broken my back for the family, for a house I had no stake in. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't press cancel yet. A part of me still hesitated, as if the child inside me still yearned for recognition, for love. Then the memories flooded back, sharp and painful like a blade. I remembered being 16 when I earned a college scholarship and my parents merely shrugged, saying, "Good, but don't let it make you arrogant." Meanwhile, Mike, just 10, was celebrated for a sloppy drawing from school. I recalled late nights studying while Mike was tucked in by Mom, lulled to sleep with lullabies. I wasn't jealous or bitter, I just quietly tried harder, thinking that if I was better, they'd see me. But they never did. At 25, when I started as a software engineer, I brought my first paycheck home to buy Mom a cashmere sweater. She smiled, thanked me, but later I saw the sweater tucked away in a corner of her closet, never worn. Around the same time, Mom bought Mike a new Xbox just because he looked sad. I remember the times I tried to take a weekend off to pursue photography, my only passion. But my parents always called, demanding I come fix the house, drive Mom to the doctor, or cover hospital bills. "Mike's busy," they'd say, though I knew he was just playing games in his room. Those memories, each small piece, each cut, now gathered into a storm within me. I thought of the will, of Dad's mocking words as I left in the rain. Grown man acting like a child. I thought of Mom, her fleeting panic but not a single apology. They'd never seen me as their son, only as a machine, an endless source of money. And I'd let them treat me that way for 10 years. Enough. I took a deep breath, my fingers moving over the keyboard. I canceled every automatic payment, the mortgage, electricity, water, internet, all of it. I removed my name from the shared account, severing every financial tie to the family. Each click was a cut, painful but liberating. I felt a weight lift, as if a boulder had been removed from my chest. I was no longer their rock. I was no longer their machine. I stood up and opened the window. The cool Portland night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and leaves. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I grabbed my phone and signed up for an online photography course, something I'd always wanted but never dared to pursue. I opened a drawer and pulled out my old dust-covered camera. I wiped it clean, my fingers gliding over its body as if touching a part of myself that had been forgotten. In the days after I canceled all the payments, my Portland apartment became a sanctuary. I began to cherish the quiet mornings when sunlight slipped through the curtains, illuminating the camera on my desk. I brewed coffee, sat down, and reviewed the photos I'd taken. A corner of the park, a sparrow perched on a branch, small moments that made me feel alive. For the first time in years, I didn't check my bank account with the dread of piling bills. But that peace didn't last. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Mom's number. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I pressed answer. "John," Mom's voice came through, urgent and tinged with irritation. "The electricity bill is overdue. The bank's calling about the mortgage, too. What are you doing, not paying anymore?" No greeting, no question about how I was. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling as if I were being yanked back to the house in Gresham where I'd once been their payment machine. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but cold. "Mike's the heir, let him handle it." There was a pause, then Mom sighed, her tone softening but still devoid of remorse. "John, you know Mike can't manage. He's young, not settled yet. You're his older brother. You're supposed to help him." I let out a dry laugh, not out of amusement, but from the painfully familiar repetition. 10 years, and they still saw me as a tool, not a person. I hung up, not letting her say more, but it wasn't over. That evening, Mike texted, a single line. "Bro, the house is about to lose power. Send some money or Mom and Dad will suffer." I stared at the message, my finger brushing the screen, but I didn't reply. Mike, 30 years old, had never asked if I was tired, if I needed help. He only knew how to take, just as he'd taken everything from our parents. Their love, their indulgence, and now the entire inheritance. I deleted the message, feeling like I'd just closed a door. A few days later, Dad called. His voice was low, sharp as a blade. "John, you think this is right? Abandoning your parents, letting the house fall apart? You're grown. Act like a man." I listened, and for a moment I felt small again, like the 16-year-old boy desperate for Dad's pride. But then I remembered the will, his mocking words as I left in the rain. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "if I'm not man enough, then Mike, the one you chose, will have to be. I'm done." I hung up, my heart pounding, but not from anger. It was the feeling of freedom, of reclaiming myself. The calls and texts kept coming, growing more frequent. Mom messaged, "John, just this once, help me." Mike called, his tone irritated. "Bro, you want Mom and Dad to end up on the street?" I didn't respond, didn't explain. Each time the phone buzzed, I let it ring, letting the sound blend with the wind outside my window. I'd given them too much, and they'd never once been grateful for it. A month later, I received a text from Mom on a Saturday morning, short and icy. "Family meeting, 3 p.m. today. You must be there." No invitation, no explanation, just a command. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen, tempted to delete it like I'd deleted their requests for money. But I paused. A small part of me, however faint, still longed for an apology, some acknowledgement. I knew it was a fantasy, but I went. Not to beg, but to end things once and for all. The house in Gresham was the same, peeling white paint, moss-covered roof tiles. But today it felt more stifling than ever. I stepped into the living room where the extended family had gathered. Mom sat in the armchair, hands clasped tightly, lips pursed. Dad stood by the window, avoiding my gaze. Mike sprawled on the sofa, arms crossed, his face sour as if I were the cause of all their troubles. Aunt Mary, uncles and aunts from Seattle, and a few cousins sat scattered around the room, whispering. The air was heavy, like the prelude to a trial. Mom spoke first, her voice trembling but laced with reproach. "John, you've abandoned the family, you canceled the payments, left us in debt, and the house is about to be foreclosed. Are you really that selfish?" Dad chimed in, his voice low and sharp. "We raised you, and this is how you repay us? Abandoning your frail, aging parents?" The murmurs of aunts and uncles rose, a chorus of judgment. Aunt Mary shook her head. "John, I never expected this from you." Mike, still lounging, added, "Bro, you want us to end up on the street?" I stood in the middle of the room, my heart pounding, not from fear, but from the rage burning inside me. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of being their pillar, and this was what I got: accusations, contemptuous glares. I gripped the stack of papers in my hand, bills, receipts, proof of everything I'd done. "Selfish?" I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Let me show you who the selfish ones are." I placed the stack of papers on the table, each sheet falling like a hammer. Mortgage payments, roof repair receipts, plumbing invoices, Mom's hospital bills, all in my name. "Here," I said, my voice ringing in the silent room. "Nearly $200,000, 10 years of working 2 jobs, 10 years without dreams, without a life of my own. I paid to keep this house standing, to keep you all comfortable. And Mike? What has he done besides leech off you?" The room fell silent, only the rustle of paper breaking the stillness. I looked at Mom, her eyes wide, lips trembling. Dad froze, his hand gripping the chair tightly. Mike sat up, his face pale, but he said nothing. I continued, my voice low but razor sharp. "And my reward? A will that leaves everything, the house, the money, the car, the jewelry. To Mike. Not a single line for me. Not a single thank you." I pulled a copy of the will from my pocket and held it up. "Anyone want to read it? Or do Mom and Dad want to explain?" I looked at them, waiting. Mom bowed her head, her hands covering her face. Dad opened his mouth but managed only a weak, "John, we just wanted what's best for Mike." I let out a dry laugh, cutting him off. "Best for Mike? And what about me? Am I not your son?" Aunt Mary, who always sided with my parents, stood up, her voice shaky. "John, I didn't know you did so much." The aunts and uncles from Seattle exchanged glances, their eyes full of unease. A cousin whispered, "How could it be so unfair?" The room seemed to explode in silence, only the thumping of my heart audible. I'd said everything, laid the truth bare. There was nothing left to hide. I turned to Mike, still sitting there, avoiding my gaze. "Mike," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "You're the heir. Now you handle it. Don't call me anymore." He didn't respond, just lowered his head, his hands clutching the sofa. I looked at my parents one last time. Their eyes, once cold and sharp, now held only confusion and shame. But I didn't need an apology anymore. I was done. I walked out of the room, the stack of papers now light as air in my hands. Outside, the afternoon sun was gentle, a stark contrast to the rain the day I'd left. I got in my car and drove back to Portland, feeling as if I'd shed a burden that had weighed on my shoulders for 10 years. I didn't hate them, but I couldn't keep living to please them. I'd given them everything, and now I chose myself. Back at my apartment, I opened my camera and reviewed the photo I'd taken that morning. An old oak by the river, its branches reaching for the sky. It reminded me that despite any storm, I could still stand tall. I smiled for the first time in years, not for anyone else, but for myself. In the weeks following the family meeting, I tried not to think about the house in Gresham. I focused on my new life, morning photography sessions by the Willamette River, online photography classes, and conversations with Sarah, a fellow photographer, about lighting and angles. But one evening I received an email from the bank, a mistaken notification as my name was still tied to some old paperwork. The house in Gresham had a foreclosure notice posted. My parents hadn't paid the mortgage for 3 consecutive months, and the bank was preparing to auction it off. I sat there staring at the laptop screen, a mix of relief and faint sorrow washing over me. That house, where I'd once been covered in mud patching the roof, where I'd sat with Mom through her sick nights, was now crumbling. But I didn't feel guilty. I'd done more than my duty as a son. Far more. It was time for them, especially Mike, to face the consequences. I heard updates from a cousin, the only one who still contacted me after the meeting. The house was listed for a reduced price, just $400,000, due to its severe disrepair. A leaking roof, cracked walls, and faulty plumbing. No one was buying. Mike, entrusted by our parents, did nothing but complain. My cousin said Mike tried borrowing money from friends, but no one trusted him. He approached several banks, but with an empty financial record, they rejected him outright. Our parents, now frailer, could only sit and watch, blaming each other and reminiscing about the days when John took care of everything. I pictured the scene. Mom in her armchair, eyes red and teary. Dad silently smoking by the window. Mike slamming his hand on the table in frustration. A part of me once would have rushed back to fix it all, as I always had. But then I remembered the will, the accusations at the family meeting, the way they'd never seen me as part of their legacy. I didn't go back. I couldn't. One day I drove through Gresham, not planning to stop, just wanting one last look. The house still stood, but now a for sale urgent sign was staked in the front yard. The grass was overgrown, the windows caked with dust. I pulled over, gazing from a distance, feeling like I was saying goodbye to an old friend. Not out of love, but because it was time to let go. I pressed the gas and drove away, not looking back. As time passed, autumn arrived in Portland, blanketing the paths with golden leaves like a gentle carpet under the soft sunlight. I had just completed a photo series for an exhibition, portraits telling the stories of strangers I met on the streets. My life now had its own rhythm. Mornings spent photographing, afternoons editing, evenings writing a blog about my journey of breaking free from family burdens. I thought I'd left the house in Gresham behind. But then a letter arrived, sent by mail in Mom's trembling handwriting. I held the envelope, my fingers tracing the paper, feeling like I was touching an old wound. I opened it, though I knew I might regret it. Mom's note was brief, her tone pleading. "John, I'm sorry if I upset you. The bank is about to take the house. Your father and I are old. We don't know what to do. Can you help us just this once?" Attached was a scrap of paper from Mike. "Bro, I know I've been awful, but Mom and Dad are suffering. Come back." Not a single acknowledgement of the 10 years I'd sacrificed, not a word of thanks. Yet as I read, I saw Mom in her armchair, eyes red and teary. Dad silent by the window, Mike frantic with helplessness. I saw them not as the people who betrayed me, but as desperate human beings, and I felt pity for them. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over Dad's number. I didn't want to fall back into the old cycle, but I couldn't abandon them completely. A small part of me, however faint, was still the boy who longed for a harmonious family. I took a deep breath and pressed call. The phone rang 3 times before Dad answered. "John," his voice raspy, tinged with surprise. "Why are you calling?" "Dad," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know about the house. I'm willing to help, but I have one condition." I paused, taking another breath. "You rewrite the will. Split the assets equally between me and Mike. I've paid for that house with 10 years of my life. I deserve to be treated like a son." Silence. I heard Dad's heavy breathing, then he erupted, his voice like thunder. "You dare put conditions on me? Who do you think you are? Selfish, ungrateful brat?" I froze, my hand tightening around the phone. He continued, his tone dripping with contempt. "You want a share of the assets? You don't deserve it. Mike is my son. You're just a troublemaker. Get lost and don't call again." The click of the call ending was as sharp as a knife. I sat there, the phone slipping from my hand, clattering onto the table. I had hoped, even just a little, that Dad would change, that he'd see me as more than a payment machine, as his son. But he'd chosen once again, just as he chose Mike in the will, just as he mocked me in the rain. This was the final straw. A void opened in my chest, but it wasn't pain. It was liberation. I'd given them one last chance, and they'd rejected me. I stood and walked to the balcony, watching the golden leaves spiral in the wind. Autumn reminded me that everything can end to begin anew. I didn't hate Dad, Mom, or Mike, but I couldn't keep living in hope of their love. I deleted Dad's number from my contacts, not out of anger, but because I needed to protect myself. I folded Mom's letter and tucked it into a drawer, just as I folded away the past. Life went on, The photo exhibition took place that week, and my favorite picture, a homeless man smiling by a bridge, was hung in the center. Sarah, my friend from photography class, patted my shoulder. "John, this photo is you, resilient despite all the storms." I smiled, knowing she was right. Autumn passed and winter arrived, bringing biting cold and drizzling rain. I stood by the Willamette River, camera in hand, capturing a boat gliding by, leaving a shimmering wake. Each photo was a piece of me, a John no longer bound by family obligations, no longer waiting for love from those who never showed gratitude. Mom's letter, Dad's scolding, Mike's text, all were now just faint shadows in my memory. I'd moved past them, not because I was strong, but because I'd learned to love myself. I started teaching a weekend photography class for high school students. The kids, with their bright eyes and innocent questions, reminded me of my younger self, a boy yearning to be seen. I taught them how to find light, how to tell stories through their photos. One student, a girl named Lily, gave me a picture she'd taken, a flower growing through a crack in a rock. "Teacher John," she said, "I think this flower is like you, strong even in tough places." I kept that photo on my desk, a reminder that I wasn't alone. My blog, where I wrote about escaping a toxic family, began attracting readers. I received emails from strangers sharing how they set boundaries with parents, siblings, or friends. One wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to live for myself. Thank you, John." Reading it, my heart felt lighter. I no longer needed validation from my parents. Family wasn't the people I'd spent 10 years trying to save. It was those who saw my worth even through a few lines on a screen. One evening, I got an email from my cousin. He said the house in Gresham had been foreclosed by the bank. My parents had moved in with Aunt Mary, while Mike rented a small apartment and worked part-time at a supermarket. He asked if I wanted to see my parents, just to say goodbye. I sat at my screen, fingers brushing the keyboard, but didn't reply right away. I thought of Dad, his voice branding me selfish and ungrateful. I thought of Mom, her letter devoid of thanks. I thought of Mike, who never apologized. I typed a short reply, "Thanks, but I'm okay. Wish them well." I didn't hate them. I'd once pitied them, wanted to save them, but I couldn't live to fix their choices. Family, I realized, isn't just blood. It's those who appreciate and respect each other. I'd found that family in Sarah, in Lily, in my blog readers, in myself when I looked in the mirror and smiled, no longer seeing a payment machine but a free man. I started planning a photography trip to the Oregon coast where waves crash and the sky stretches wide. I wanted to capture the sun sinking into the sea, not to prove anything, but to remind myself that each day is a chance to start anew. I bought a notebook and wrote down dreams I'd buried, opening a photography studio, publishing a photo book, teaching more classes for underprivileged kids. Each line was a promise to myself. Winter was cold, but I didn't feel lonely. I hosted a small party at my apartment, inviting Sarah, a few students, and a friend from a local magazine. We laughed, ate cake, and listened to music. Sarah raised her glass. "To John, who found his own light." I smiled, clinking my glass, feeling my heart soar. This was my family, imperfect but genuine. As night fell, I stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the stars twinkling over Portland's sky. I thought of the house in Gresham, my parents, Mike, and silently wished them peace. But I didn't need them anymore. I'd found peace not in pleasing others, but in living true to myself. I am John, and for the first time I knew what family truly is: love, respect, and freedom.